Mr. Roney, I wanted to direct a question to you. Your testimony, written testimony, and your testimony earlier in the hearing highlighted that many of the top sugar exporters are also top sugar subsidizers, and you have been rightly critical of those subsidy programs. However, one country I noticed to be missing from your list, and that is Australia. According to the USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service, Australia is the world's 9th largest producer of sugar and the 3rd largest exporter. However, in recent discussions regarding trade and sugar policy around the world, the assertion has been raised that Australian supports for sugar are quite minimal in comparison to the rest of the world. So I wonder if you could comment on this claim, and then furthermore, could you give an opinion as to how Australia is able to compete in the world market without these subsidies, if they are in fact minimal?
Thank you, Congressman. Australia's subsidies have been relatively small, relative to other countries, but their government has come to their rescue at times when prices are low or there's been weather damage, and they've also had a single desk seller, which is of some question under WTO rules, for state trading enterprises. But we also look at how Australia has fared with its relative exposure to world prices, and they've not fared well. Their production has been struggling. It's been down in many years. Their role in the market, in the world market, has been diminished by countries that have continued to subsidize. They've lost out on market share, for example. They used to be the world's 2nd biggest sugar exporter. Now Thailand is the world's 2nd biggest sugar exporter by far, and that was entirely through Thai government decisions to set high prices and to encourage exports onto the world market. So Australia, for not coming to the rescue for its producers more than it has really suffered from that.
Right, but they're also the 3rd largest exporter.
Still declining, but yes, still 3rd.
Third is still pretty high, especially when they're the 9th. They're obviously exporting a very large quantity of their sugar. If they're 9th in production, but 3rd in exports.
Yes.
The other question I'd like to follow up on with regard to Mr. Peterson is if you think you have any practical ways to apply pressure to other countries to come to the table to negotiate down the subsidies.
I think in the world of sugar, the promise or the hope would be that as these countries reduce their subsidies, that world prices would rise, that the least efficient producers would fall out of the business, and as world prices rise to reflect the cost of producing sugar, then the most competitive would survive. For some countries like ourselves, who are relatively competitive by world standards, we would welcome that approach. The problem and the obstinance comes from the countries that are not relatively efficient, but are really committed to their sugar industries, and will be reluctant to reduce the supports for them.
Thank you. Let me just ask briefly each of you with regard to the TPP. I know we haven't seen the language yet, but I'm just going to go down. We'll start with you, Dr. Hayes. Your general reaction to how it will treat American agriculture, getting access to these markets or giving up too much access to our markets. Do you have a favorable or unfavorable? I don't need you to go into the details, but.
Favorable. I think on cotton fiber trade, it should be favorable there. The question mark for us will be what happens with the textile trade, and that's a question yet to be seen in terms of some of the details.
Sure. Mr. Roney?
We're still waiting for the details, as are the others, but at this point we're optimistic that the amount of additional access granted will not jeopardize the no-cost operation of U.S. sugar policy.
Thank you. Mr. Castaneda.
Yeah, I think that actually we echo Mr. Roney. I think it may be slightly unbalanced if you see what we grant to other countries with what we got. But at the end, we hope once we see all the details that perhaps it may be a net positive on the economic overall. But we don't know yet.
I know you were very concerned going into the final negotiations, but were some steps taken there that helped assuage some of your concerns?
I think that a letter from many members of Congress and many calls from members of Congress help us at the end to prevent a really bad agreement. I think that going into the final, and I think I have heard that dairy was one of the last issues to be discussed at 5 in the morning on Monday of the conclusion of the agreement. So I think that we avoided a really bad agreement. Again, the jury's still out to see how good may be, but it doesn't look like we have this great access into Canada or Japan, which we're looking for.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman's time is